writers, this is part 2, maybe, depending on the order that you choose to watch them, of the using sources presentations. This one is about MLA format. The first half or first section is about how to set up your paper overall and how to do the MLA heading. If this is already familiar to you, you can go ahead to the next part, which is how to set up the Works Cited page, which you may need a refresher on or may be new to you. So MLA format, I want to make sure you know that the textbook has guidelines on how to set up the paper in MLA. It also shows a sample paper. So let's take a look at the sample paper and take a look at what the MLA paper will look like. So over here on the left, now keep in mind this is not up in the header, this is in your actual paper, is your name, your professor or instructor's name, the course that you are in, so not the assignment, but the course. In this case, it will be ENGL 1020, or you can write Composition 1, either one, and then the date that the assignment is due, or the date that you're submitting it. So please notice the date formatting is the number, day, the month spelled out, and then the year with no commas or anything like that. Then we have the title centered. Please notice the title is not larger, it's not underlined, it's not bold. It's the same font to, standardize and professionalize our writing. So right there, centered in the middle. Up here on the top in the heading, we do have the author's last name, your last name, and the page number. Now, this is a little bit tricky, but the way you want to do this is if you write the number here, it will use that same number on every page. That's not what we want. So instead we go to Insert, Page Numbers, and then we choose the one that goes sequentially up in the top right, there. And then you'll put your name there. And then this, as well as the entire paper, is in Times New Roman 12-point font. Now, after that, of course, we just start our paragraphs. But one really important thing is that the whole paper should be double spaced. So we want to double space. Now, also your paper settings may be automatically set to add an extra space after each paragraph, which would look like this. So that's too much space between the heading. And then there's a little extra space between each paragraph here. We don't want to do that because we don't need that extra space between stuff. Actually gonna fix that now. Remove space after paragraph if you can find it there. We'll do it here as well. Remove space after paragraph. And throughout the paper, there should be no extra spacing between paragraphs. The indentation is enough to show that your paragraph is breaking. So that's what the overall format looks like. And please keep in mind that the textbook has the guidelines on everything that should be happening as you set up your MLA paper, etc. There's also instructions that the works cited list begins after the body of the paper on a new page. So it's right there within your paper. So let's take a look too at what that will look like after the paper. You can see the paper ends wherever it ends. So on the last page, we leave that whole rest of that last page, and then at the top of the next page comes the works cited page. So now on to formatting the works cited page, which has a little more trickiness to it. The words works cited is the title of your works cited page. So we put that front and center in the top. Please notice again, it's not bold, it's not underlined, it's not a larger font, just works cited. Centered. Then we begin the citations here. So how to format each individual citation we will talk about soon, but the overall formatting of the page, we use hanging indent. What that means is it's the opposite of a paragraph. In a paragraph, the first line is indented and the rest is scooched all the way to the left. In a citation, the first line is scooched all the way to the left. The following lines are indented. We do that because it's just much easier to see where these begin if they're scooched all the way to the left. It's sort of, think of it as like a bullet point. It begins here and then everything under it is tabbed over so that you can clearly see each key point. In this case, it's each key source. So hanging indents can be really difficult for people to get the hang of. I'll show you here on a new doc. If I have a new document and I'm typing the author's last name, I'm going to make sure it's in Times New Roman. So anytime you start a new paper, make sure it's in the correct font. There we go. Okay, this is my title, how to write a paper. Title of my source. Let's say it was published in Newsweek magazine, and it was published in 1995. There we go. So let's pretend, though, it was a really long title, or there was a lot more information to be included. Okay, so there we go. Now, we need this, first of all, of course, all of them are double spaced, but we also need the second line to go over. But if I put my cursor here and I hit tab, it thinks I'm confused, and it instead tabs over the first line. That's not what we want. So there's two ways to get this hanging indent to work. One is to put your cursor at the end of the first line and click, then hit return or enter, and then hit tab. And that will allow you to tab over the first line. So again, you're going to put your cursor at the end of the first line, enter, and then hit tab. And then there's a little extra space there. I'm going to get rid of that. Okay? The other way to do this is to actually use the formatting of docs. I'm going to take this source. I'm going to go to Format, Align and Indent, Indentation Options. It's kind of hidden here. We're going to do Special Indent, Hanging, and then it's a 0.5 indentation. And then that will scooch over the second line of your sources. So you can do either of those tricks to get them to hanging indent. So please notice too, there's not extra spaces between. So the next one just comes next. We hanging indent it by using either of those tricks, and off we go. Please notice too, the works cited entries are in alphabetical order. That is so as your reader is reading through your paper. If they want to find a source, they can easily find it based on alphabetical order. So that's how we format the works cited page overall. Now, what about each of the individual sources on the works cited page? Please keep in mind, again, the textbook has many different examples of types of sources. It's too much for me to cover here because it would take hours, I think, to show you all of those examples. So crack open that textbook and take a look at the different examples. If you come across a special situation, check the textbook first. In general, though, we include these basic concepts, and I'm including a website here because a lot of your sources that you use will be web-based sources. So the author comes first, always, if there is an author. The title of the actual article that you're reading on that website. The name of the website comes next. The date the site was last updated or the date it was published. And then the URL or DOI. So in general, it looks like this. Now, in this case, they have named an organization as the author. So if your site does not have a specific author, however, it's like the CDC or something like that, you can cite that organization as the author. Now here comes the quoted title of the source itself, which always comes next. This is the overall website on which it was published. In this case, they're citing it as a publisher, not like a website itself, but a publisher. If it's a website, it's italicized. If it's just the publisher, it is not. Here's the date the site was updated or the date the article was published, whichever you can find. And then this is the URL that comes after it. And please notice the hanging indent as well. So there's lots of different types of examples, a scholarly journal, a newspaper, a book. There's what if it's the second edition of the book? What if there's multiple authors? What if it's an article within a book or just a chapter of a book? What if it's a podcast? Or what if it's an article from an online database? All of these examples are covered in practical argument. Let's look at just a few examples here. Online scholarly journal, when you get to scholarly sources, it's the same basic concept, author's last name, comma, first name, the title of the article itself, the journal it was published in. But then for scholarly sources or any sources with volumes and issue, we include the volume, the issue number, and then we include the date followed by the URL. Here too, same concept. This is a magazine article accessed online. Newspaper article accessed online, or a library database. The only difference here is that we include the database itself before the URL or DOI. DOI is Anytime you can use a DOI, you want to, because a scholarly source, the URL doesn't usually work since you need a subscription to view it. So the DOI substitutes for that in a scholarly source. A lot of students often ask me, what about using a citation site? So for example, even Google Docs has a citation formatting that you can use. You could use EasyBib, you can use Son of Citation. But a lot of times when students rely completely on those, the citations come out incorrectly. Either there's a setting that's off, or it's out of date, or it's just plain incorrect. So if you use one, please be very careful. You can certainly input your information, you can have it output, but then you need to double check to make sure it's formatted correctly, it included all the essential information. I do sometimes get angry students when I tell them their citations are incorrect, who say, but I used XYZ. Well, that cannot substitute for your brain or for your use of the classroom material. So whatever you do, just make sure it looks just like this. And that the citations, whatever type of source it is, are cited correctly according to the instructions in the book. So I hope this is helpful. There will be special circumstances that are more difficult for you to figure out. Check the textbook first and then let me know if you get stuck. Good luck.